The air in the London antique shop hung thick with the scent of aged paper and forgotten histories. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that pierced through the grimy windows, illuminating shelves crammed with relics from bygone eras. This wasn't just any antique shop. It was a haven for the eccentric, the curious, and those who sought to unearth the secrets hidden within the detritus of the past. Professor Alastair Humphrey, the shop's proprietor, was a man who could tell a story with every object he owned. His fingers, stained with ink and nicotine, traced the spines of ancient tomes with a reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. It was Alastair who unearthed the map, tucked away inside a crumbling leather-bound diary purchased at auction. The map itself was a marvel of antiquated cartography. Drawn on treated goatskin, its edges frayed and brittle with age, it depicted a region of the Egyptian Western Desert largely uncharted even today. Hieroglyphs, faded but discernible, were interspersed with annotations in a looping, almost manic script that Alastair tentatively identified as belonging to a little-known sect of early Egyptologists. But it wasn't the map's age or its intricate detail that sent a shiver down Alastair's spine. It was the symbol emblazoned in its center, a stylized sun disk, bisected by a serpent, a clear, albeit corrupted, representation of the Aten, the deity worshipped by the heretical pharaoh Akhenaten. Akhenaten, the forgotten pharaoh. His reign, a brief but tumultuous period in Egyptian history, was marked by radical religious reforms that challenged the established pantheon and shook the foundations of Egyptian society. He abandoned the traditional gods, embracing the Aten as the sole deity, and moved the capital to a newly built city, Akhenaten, dedicated to his solar cult. But after his death, his reforms were brutally reversed, his monuments defaced, and his name expunged from the official records. He was, in effect, erased from history, becoming the forgotten pharaoh. Legends persisted, however, whispers of a hidden tomb, untouched by time and filled with unimaginable treasures, but also protected by potent curses and guarded by ancient traps. The tomb said to contain not only Akhenaten's earthly possessions but also the secrets of his heretical beliefs and the true extent of his power. Alastair, though a seasoned antiquarian, felt a tremor of unease as he examined the map more closely. He recognized certain geographical markers, subtle details that corroborated the map's authenticity. This wasn't just a fanciful treasure map. It was a genuine clue to the location of Akhenaten's lost tomb. He knew he couldn't embark on such a perilous journey himself. He needed someone with the knowledge, the courage, and, perhaps most importantly, the recklessness to follow the map's treacherous path. He needed someone like Indiana Jones. Alastair carefully wrapped the map, securing it within layers of acid-free paper. And a sturdy leather satchel. He knew that this discovery could rewrite history, but it could also unleash forces best left undisturbed. The fate of the forgotten pharaoh, and perhaps the world, rested on his decision to seek out the renowned archaeologist. He checks his Rolodex and finds Dr. Jones's number. He picks up the phone, dials the number, and waits to hear the familiar greeting. The shrill ringing of the telephone shattered the relative quiet of the lecture hall. Indiana Jones, mid-sentence, in a discourse on the societal impact of Mesopotamian trade routes, paused, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features. He gestured apologetically to his students, a motley collection of eager undergraduates and seasoned academics, before excusing himself to answer the insistent call. Jones, he barked into the receiver, his voice retaining a hint of the classroom's authority. Dr. Jones, this is Alastair Humphrey. We met briefly at the Antiquarian Society gathering last spring. The voice on the other end was slightly breathless, laced with a nervous excitement that piqued Indy's curiosity. Humphrey, the chap with the impressive collection of cuneiform tablets, right? What can I do for you, Alastair? I found something, Dr. Jones. Something extraordinary. Something, Akhenaten. The name hung in the air, a loaded word that instantly cut through Indy's professional detachment. Akhenaten, the heretical pharaoh. A figure shrouded in mystery and controversy. Indy had always been fascinated by the Amarna period, the era of Akhenaten's reign, a period of radical religious and artistic innovation that was swiftly and brutally suppressed after his death. Akhenaten? What about him? Indy asked, his voice now laced with a genuine interest. I've acquired a map, Dr. Jones. A map that I believe leads to his lost tomb. Indy scoffed, a familiar skepticism rising to the surface. Lost tombs are a dime a dozen, Alistair. And Akhenaten's, well, most scholars believe it was destroyed during the post-Amarna backlash. Perhaps, Alistair conceded. But this map, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. The cartography, the hieroglyphs, the annotations, they all point to a location that has remained hidden for over 4,000 years. Alistair then explains the details of the map, that he tells of the symbol and the geography. Indy listens intently, interjecting with questions. Indy remained unconvinced, but a seed of doubt had been planted that he was a scientist, and he was always open to new information, no matter how outlandish it might seem. All right, Alistair, Indy relented. I'll bite. Send me the map, I'll take a look. Alistair, relieved, promised to dispatch the map immediately as Indy hung up the phone. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to be drawn into something far more complicated than a simple archaeological dig. Later that day, a sleek black car pulled up to Indy's university office. A woman emerged, dressed in a tailored suit and exuding an air of quiet confidence. She introduced herself as Ms. Eleanor Vance, a representative of a private benefactor who wished to remain anonymous. She explained that her employer had been following Indy's career with great interest and was prepared to fund his expedition to locate Akhenaten's tomb, should he deem the map authentic. Indy raised an eyebrow. And what does your employer expect in return? Eleanor smiled enigmatically. Only that the truth be uncovered, Dr. Jones. Whatever that truth may be. She handed Indy a thick envelope filled with research papers, historical analyses, and a generous check to cover initial expenses. The map will arrive tomorrow. Consider this a gesture of good faith. As Eleanor departed, Indy stared at the envelope, a mixture of excitement and apprehension swirling within him. He knew that accepting this offer would plunge him into a world of danger and intrigue. But the allure of the unknown, the challenge of unraveling a historical mystery, was too strong to resist. He knew he was going to Egypt. The following morning, a courier delivered the map to Indy's office. Unfurling it on his cluttered desk, Indy examined the document with a critical eye. The goatskin parchment was undeniably old, its surface cracked and stained with the passage of centuries. The hieroglyphs, though faded, were meticulously rendered, and the annotations, written in a spidery hand, hinted at a profound understanding of ancient Egyptian religious practices. He spent hours poring over the map, cross-referencing the geographical markers with satellite images and historical texts. That he found several anomalies, subtle inconsistencies that defied conventional explanations. The map depicted certain wadis and rock formations that had vanished from the modern landscape, suggesting either remarkable accuracy or an elaborate hoax. He called Marcus Brody, his old friend and colleague at the National Museum, seeking his expert opinion on the map's authenticity. Marcus, ever the cautious academic, expressed reservations but admitted that the map possessed a certain undeniable allure. Indy, my boy, Marcus cautioned. Akhenaten is a dangerous obsession. His reign was a time of upheaval and heresy, and his legacy is shrouded in darkness. Are you sure you want to delve into this? That's precisely why I have to, Marcus, Indy replied, a glint of adventure in his eyes. If this map is genuine, it could rewrite our understanding of the Amarna period. Besides, he added with a wry grin, a little darkness never hurt anyone. The historical inconsistencies, coupled with the anonymous benefactor's generous offer, had piqued Indy's intellectual curiosity. He couldn't resist the temptation to investigate further. He began making preparations for his journey to Egypt, gathering essential supplies and contacting his network of contacts in Cairo. He knew he couldn't undertake this expedition alone. He needed a capable partner, someone with expertise in ancient Egyptian languages and archaeology. His thoughts turned to Dr. Zara Adel, a brilliant but somewhat abrasive archaeologist he had met at a conference in Rome. Zara was known for her sharp intellect, her unwavering skepticism, and her no-nonsense approach to fieldwork. She was also fluent in Arabic and had extensive experience excavating in the Egyptian desert. Indy tracked down Zara's contact information and placed a call to her office at the University of Cairo. After a brief but spirited conversation, Zara reluctantly agreed to join him on the expedition. Drawn in by the mystery of the map and the opportunity to challenge Indy's more outlandish theories. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Indy, his activities had not gone unnoticed. In a dimly lit office in Berlin, a shadowy figure named Colonel Dietrich, a former Nazi officer with a long-standing obsession with the occult, was meticulously studying a dossier on Indiana Jones. Dietrich had learned of the map's existence and Indy's involvement, and he was determined to acquire the tomb's secrets for himself. He believed that Akhenaten possessed knowledge of ancient magic that could be harnessed for nefarious purposes. He began assembling a team of ruthless mercenaries, preparing to intercept Indy in Egypt and claim the forgotten Pharaoh's treasures for his own. Dietrich mutters to himself in German, Dieser Jones word Michigan nicht auf halten. Die macht Akhenaten's word main sane. This Jones will not stop me. The power of Akhenaten will be mine. The race for Akhenaten's tomb had begun. A dangerous game of cat and mouse that would lead Indy and his adversaries deep into the heart of the Egyptian desert. A few days later, Indy landed in Cairo, the bustling city a cacophony of sounds and smells. He was immediately greeted by Zara, who wasted no time in expressing her skepticism about the entire endeavor. So, Jones, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, you actually believe this ancient treasure map will lead us to Akhenaten's untouched tomb? Indy smiled, unfazed by her cynicism. Believe? No, but I'm willing to find out. Besides, he added, winking, what's life without a little adventure? Zara rolled her eyes. Adventure? This is archaeology, Jones, not a Boy Scout jamboree. And I hope you brought more than just that ridiculous hat of yours. Relax, Zara. Indy chuckled. I've got everything we need. Now, let's find a way out of this madhouse and get to work. He glances around, checking for any strange-looking people. I have a feeling we aren't the only ones interested in this tomb. Cairo was a labyrinth of bustling markets, ancient mosques, and crumbling colonial architecture. The air was thick with the aroma of spices, the incessant honking of car horns, and the calls of street vendors hawking their wares. Indy and Zara navigated the chaotic streets in a battered taxi, heading towards a discreet hotel in the heart of the city's historic district. So, where do we start, Jones? Zara asked, her voice barely audible above the din. With your infallible map, I presume. The map points to a series of clues scattered throughout the city, Indy explained, unfolding a copy of the map on his lap. We need to decipher these clues to pinpoint the exact location of the tomb's entrance. Their first stop was the Khan El Khalili Bazaar, a sprawling marketplace filled with exotic goods and hidden secrets. Indy believed that one of the map's annotations referred to a specific stall that sold ancient artifacts as they wandered through the labyrinthine alleys. Indy couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He noticed several men lurking in the shadows, their eyes following their every move. He recognized the telltale signs of professional mercenaries. The cold, calculating gaze, the subtle bulge beneath their jackets, and the way they moved with a quiet, deadly efficiency. We're not alone, Zara, Indy muttered, his hand instinctively reaching for the revolver concealed beneath his jacket. I think we have company. Mercenaries, Zara asked, her eyes scanning the crowd. Who hired them? My guess is Colonel Dietrich, Indy replied grimly. He's been after artifacts like this for years. He probably learned about the map and decided to cut us off at the pass. They continued their search, trying to blend in with the throngs of shoppers, but the mercenaries remained close behind, their presence a constant reminder of the danger that lay ahead. Finally, they located the stall they were looking for, a dimly lit shop filled with dusty relics and forgotten treasures. The proprietor, an elderly man with a wizened face and piercing eyes, greeted them with a knowing smile. Looking for something special, Effendi? He asked, his voice raspy with age. We're interested in ancient maps, Indy replied, showing the man a sketch of the map's central symbol. Have you ever seen anything like this before? The old man's eyes widened. That is the symbol of Akhenaten, he whispered, his voice filled with awe and fear. It is said to be cursed. He then tells them a short story of the curse of Akhenaten and how he would not want anything to do with the map. Despite the old man's warnings, Indy pressed on, asking about the map's annotations. The old man hesitated, then reluctantly revealed that the annotations referred to a series of hidden chambers located beneath the city's ancient aqueducts. As they left the stall, Indy and Zara were ambushed by the mercenaries. A fierce gun battle erupted in the crowded marketplace, sending shoppers scattering in terror. Indy and Zara fought back, using their wits and their weapons to fend off the attackers. They managed to escape the bazaar, but not without taking a few bullets and leaving several mercenaries wounded. They knew that Dietrich's forces were closing in, and they had to move quickly if they wanted to reach the tomb before he did. They hailed another taxi and sped off into the night, determined to unravel the secrets of Akhenaten's tomb and outwit their ruthless pursuers under the cover of darkness. Indy and Zara made their way to the ancient aqueducts, a sprawling network of underground tunnels and chambers that once supplied Cairo with fresh water. The air inside the aqueducts was damp and musty, filled with the echoes of dripping water and the scurrying of rats. "This place gives me the creeps," Zara muttered, her flashlight beam dancing across the crumbling walls. "Are you sure this is the right place, Jones?" "The old man in the bazaar was adamant," Indy replied, consulting the map. The annotations refer to a series of hidden chambers beneath the aqueducts, chambers that were used by Akhenaten's priests for secret rituals. They navigated the treacherous tunnels, following the map's cryptic clues. They encountered dead ends, collapsed passageways, and swarms of bats that filled the air with their leathery wings. At one point, they stumbled upon a hidden chamber adorned with ancient hieroglyphs depicting Akhenaten and his solar cult. Zara carefully examined the hieroglyphs, deciphering their meaning. "These hieroglyphs describe a ritual that was performed to appease the Aten," she explained. "It seems that Akhenaten believed that the Aten required constant nourishment to maintain its power." They continued their search, following the trail of clues deeper into the aqueducts. They discovered a series of secret passages that led them to a large, circular chamber, and in the center of the chamber was a stone altar, stained with what appeared to be dried blood. "This must be where the rituals were performed," Indy said, his voice hushed with reverence. "The map indicates that the next clue is hidden beneath this altar." They carefully examined the altar, searching for a hidden compartment or inscription. Finally, Zara discovered a small, almost invisible symbol etched into the stone. "This symbol matches one of the symbols on the map," she said, pointing to the etching. "It indicates that the next clue is located in the western desert, near a hidden oasis known as the Eye of Ra. The Eye of Ra. Indy had heard of this oasis, a legendary spring said to possess mystical properties. It was located deep in the desolate western desert, a region known for its scorching heat, treacherous sandstorms, and hostile tribes. They emerged from the aqueducts, blinking in the bright sunlight. They knew that the journey to the Eye of Ra would be perilous, but they were determined to follow the map's clues to the end. They hired a caravan of camels and guides, and set off into the western desert, leaving the bustling city of Cairo behind. As they ventured deeper into the desert, the landscape became increasingly barren and unforgiving. The sun beat down mercilessly, and the sand stretched out before them like an endless ocean. On the third day of their journey, they spotted a dust cloud on the horizon. Indy raised his binoculars and peered into the distance. He recognized the distinctive shapes of armored vehicles and armed men. "It's Dietrich," he said grimly. "He's found us." The mercenaries were closing in, and Indy and Zara knew that they were in for a fight. They prepared for battle, determined to protect the map and reach the Eye of Ra before Dietrich could claim the secrets of Akhenaten's tomb. They set up an ambush in a narrow canyon, hoping to catch the mercenaries off guard. As Dietrich's vehicles approached, Indy and Zara opened fire, unleashing a hail of bullets and explosions. The mercenaries returned fire, and a fierce battle erupted in the desolate canyon. The canyon echoed with the sounds of gunfire and explosions. Indy and Zara, using the rocky terrain to their advantage, managed to hold off the mercenaries, inflicting heavy casualties. However, they were outnumbered and outgunned, and they knew that they couldn't hold out forever. "We need to get out of here," Zara shouted, firing a burst of shots at an approaching vehicle. "They'll overrun us eventually." Indy nodded in agreement. "There's a narrow passage at the end of the canyon," he said. "It's our only chance." They fought their way towards the passage, dodging bullets and explosions. As they reached the entrance, a grenade landed at their feet. Indy quickly grabbed the grenade and hurled it back at the mercenaries, who scattered in panic. They scrambled through the passage, which led them to a hidden valley. The valley was lush and green, a stark contrast to the barren desert that surrounded Eighties. In the center of the valley was a shimmering oasis, the Eye of Ra. "We made it," Zara said, her voice filled with relief. "We actually made it." But their relief was short-lived. As they approached the oasis, they noticed several warning signs. Bleached bones scattered around the perimeter, strange symbols carved into the rocks, and an eerie silence that hung in the air. "This place feels wrong," Indy said, his hand instinctively reaching for his revolver. "I don't like this." As they ventured closer to the oasis, they discovered the reason for the warning signs. The oasis was surrounded by quicksand pits, cleverly disguised beneath a layer of vegetation. Venomous snakes slithered through the undergrowth, and giant scorpions lurked beneath the rocks. "This is a death trap," Zara said, her skepticism returning with a vengeance. Akhenaten didn't want anyone to reach his tomb. They carefully navigated the treacherous terrain, using their knowledge and wit to avoid the dangers. Indy used his whip to swing across the quicksand pits, while Zara used her knowledge of ancient Egyptian rituals to ward off the venomous creatures. At one point, they triggered an ancient trap, a hidden pressure plate that released a torrent of arrows from the surrounding rocks. Indy and Zara narrowly avoided being impaled, diving for cover just in time. "These traps are incredibly sophisticated," Zara said, examining the mechanism. Akhenaten's engineers were geniuses. As they reached the center of the oasis, they discovered a hidden entrance concealed beneath a waterfall. The entrance was sealed with a massive stone door, adorned with intricate carvings. "This is it," Indy said, his voice filled with excitement. "The entrance to Akhenaten's tomb." But as they prepared to open the door, they heard the sound of approaching vehicles. Dietrich and his mercenaries had caught up with them. "It looks like we have company," Zara said, her voice laced with resignation. "This is going to be difficult." Indy nodded grimly. "Let's give them a warm welcome." They prepared for another battle, knowing that the fate of Akhenaten's tomb, and perhaps the world, hung in the balance. The battle would be difficult as the mercenaries were closing in and they were standing outside the tomb. The air crackled with tension as Indy and Zara prepared to face Dietrich and his mercenaries. They knew that their chances of survival were slim, but they were determined to protect the tomb's secrets at all costs. "All right, Zara," Indy said, his voice calm and resolute. "Let's show these guys what we're made of." They took cover behind the rocks, waiting for the mercenaries to approach. As Dietrich's vehicles drew closer, Indy and Zara opened fire, unleashing a barrage of bullets and explosions. The mercenaries returned fire, and another fierce battle erupted amidst the chaos. Indy noticed something peculiar. The waterfall that concealed the tomb's entrance seemed to be shifting, as if it were responding to the vibrations of the battle. He realized that the waterfall was actually a cleverly disguised mechanism that opened the stone door. "Zara, the waterfall!" Indy shouted. "It's opening the entrance." Zara understood immediately. She focused her fire on the mercenaries, creating a diversion while Indy raced towards the waterfall. As he reached the entrance, the stone door slowly slid open, revealing a dark and forbidding passage. "After you, my dear," Indy said, gesturing towards the entrance. Zara hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Let's get this over with." They plunged into the darkness, leaving the battle behind. As the stone door closed behind them, they were enveloped in an eerie silence. The passage was narrow and winding, leading them deeper and deeper beneath the sands. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay, and the walls were adorned with grotesque carvings depicting scenes of ancient rituals and sacrifices. "This place is disturbing," Zara said, her voice barely a whisper. "I have a bad feeling about this." Indy shared her apprehension. He could feel a sense of dread creeping into his heart, as if they were trespassing on sacred ground. As they ventured further into the tomb, they began to encounter booby-traps. Hidden pits, pressure plates, and poison darts. Indy used his knowledge of ancient civilizations to disarm the traps, while Zara used her archaeological expertise to decipher the cryptic inscriptions. They were making progress, but they knew that Dietrich and his mercenaries were not far behind. They could hear the sounds of their footsteps echoing through the tunnels. Suddenly, The passage opened into a large chamber. In the center of the chamber was a massive sarcophagus, made of solid gold. "This must be Akhenaten's burial chamber," Indy said, his voice filled with awe. "We found it." But as they approached the sarcophagus, they heard a chilling voice echo through the chamber. "You have trespassed on sacred ground," the voice said. "Prepare to face the wrath of Akhenaten." The sarcophagus began to shake violently, and the lid slowly slid open, revealing a horrifying sight. The mummy of Akhenaten rose from the sarcophagus, its eyes glowing with an unholy light. "He's not dead," Zara gasped, her face pale with terror. "He's alive." Indy and Zara were trapped in the chamber with the undead pharaoh, and they knew that they were in for the fight of their lives. The door closes behind them, and they are now in a face-to-face battle with the undead pharaoh. The chamber plunged into darkness as Akhenaten rose, the torches extinguished by an unseen force. Indy, ever resourceful, fumbled for his lighter, igniting a small flame that cast dancing shadows on the walls. The undead pharaoh stood before them, a gaunt figure wrapped in decaying linen, his eyes burning with malevolent energy. "So, it seems the legends were true," Zara said, her voice trembling slightly. "Akhenaten isn't just a mummy. He's something else." Akhenaten raised his hands, and the chamber began to shake. Hieroglyphs on the walls glowed with an eerie light, and the stone floor trembled beneath their feet. "You will not leave this place alive," Akhenaten hissed, his voice a raspy whisper that seemed to echo from the depths of the tomb. "You have disturbed my eternal slumber, and you will pay the price." Indy knew that they couldn't fight Akhenaten directly. They needed to find a way to escape the chamber and seal him back in his sarcophagus. "We need to get out of here, Zara," Indy shouted. "Now!" They turned and fled, racing back through the passage they had come from as they ran. The tomb began to transform around them. Corridors shifted, walls collapsed, and new traps appeared out of nowhere. The tomb was a living labyrinth, designed to protect Akhenaten's secrets from intruders. Indy and Zara found themselves navigating a deadly maze of pressure plates, collapsing floors, and riddle-based puzzles. At one point, they triggered a pressure plate that released a swarm of scarab beetles, which swarmed over them, biting and stinging. Indy used his whip to fend off the beetles, while Zara used her knowledge of ancient Egyptian magic to repel them. They reached a dead end, a massive stone wall blocking their path. Inscribed on the wall was a complex riddle, written in ancient hieroglyphs. "We need to solve this riddle to open the door," Zara said, frantically deciphering the hieroglyphs. "But we don't have much time." While Zara worked on the riddle, Indy kept a lookout for Akhenaten, who was pursuing them relentlessly. He could hear the pharaoh's raspy breathing and the shuffling of his feet as he stalked them through the tomb. Suddenly, they heard another sound, the unmistakable sound of gunfire. Dietrich and his mercenaries had finally caught up with them. "They're here," Zara shouted. "We're trapped." The mercenaries burst into the chamber, their guns blazing. Indy and Zara found themselves caught in a three-way battle, fighting both the mercenaries and the undead pharaoh. "Zara, the riddle!" Indy shouted, dodging bullets and scarab beetles. "Hurry!" Zara finally cracked the riddle. Reciting the solution aloud, she spoke the words. The stone wall slid open, revealing a new passage. "Go, Indy, go!" Zara shouted. "I'll hold them off." Indy hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He knew that Zara was putting her life on the line to save him. He plunged into the new passage, leaving Zara to face the mercenaries and the undead pharaoh alone. The tomb was more than just a set of traps. It was deadly, and the mercenaries were right behind them. Indy raced through the newly opened passage, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what awaited him on the other side, but he knew that he had to keep moving, for Zara's sake. As he ran, he noticed that the passage was different from the others he had encountered in the tomb. The walls were smoother, the air was cleaner, and there was a faint, ethereal glow emanating from the end of the tunnel. He reached the end of the passage and found himself in a vast, cavernous chamber. The chamber was filled with strange and wondrous artifacts. Golden statues, jeweled necklaces, and ancient scrolls. The air hummed with an otherworldly energy, and Indy felt a sense of awe and wonder wash over him. But as he explored the chamber, He also began to notice disturbing signs. The walls were covered in gruesome images of sacrifices and torture, that he saw evidence of Akhenaten's heretical beliefs and the brutal suppression of his cult. He found a series of ancient scrolls that described Akhenaten's experiments with black magic, his attempts to achieve immortality, and his pact with dark forces. The scrolls revealed that Akhenaten was not just a religious reformer. He was a sorcerer, a madman who had unleashed a terrible curse upon himself and his followers. As Indy delved deeper into the chamber, he began to experience strange occurrences. He saw unsettling visions of Akhenaten's reign of terror, heard whispers in the darkness, and felt a cold, clammy hand brush against his skin. He realized that he was not alone in the chamber. Akhenaten's curse was real, and it was trying to drive him mad. He fought against the curse, using his willpower and his knowledge of ancient lore to resist its influence. But the curse was strong, and it was slowly eroding his sanity. He stumbled upon a hidden altar, stained with blood and adorned with strange symbols. He realized that this was the source of the curse, the place where Akhenaten had made his pact with the dark forces. That he knew that he had to destroy the altar to break the curse, but he also knew that doing so would unleash a terrible power. That he hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks and the rewards. But then he remembered Zara, her courage and her sacrifice. That he knew that he had to do everything in his power to stop Akhenaten, even if it meant unleashing a terrible evil upon the world. That he raised his whip and lashed out at the altar, shattering it into pieces. As the altar crumbled, a wave of energy surged through the chamber, knocking Indy off his feet. The chamber began to shake violently, and the walls started to collapse. Indy knew that the tomb was about to crumble around him. He scrambled to his feet and raced back towards the passage, determined to escape before it was too late. The curse was broken, but he had unleashed a force more powerful than he could have ever imagined. The curse was very strong, and it was going to take more than a whip to get rid of it. Indy scrambled through the collapsing tunnels, the walls crumbling around him. He could hear the sounds of the tomb groaning and cracking, as if it were a living being in its death throes. That he knew that he had to escape quickly, or he would be buried alive. He raced back towards the main chamber, hoping to find a way out. As he ran, he saw glimpses of Dietrich and his mercenaries, who were also struggling to escape the collapsing tomb. They were all caught in the same deadly trap, victims of Akhenaten's curse. That he reached the main chamber and found it in a state of chaos. The sarcophagus was lying open, the mummy of Akhenaten nowhere to be seen. Dietrich and his mercenaries were frantically searching for the pharaoh's treasure, oblivious to the danger that surrounded them. "Where is it?" Dietrich shouted, his voice filled with desperation. "Where is the power?" Indy knew that Dietrich was not just after treasure. He was after the secrets of Akhenaten's black magic, the power to control the forces of darkness. "It's not here, Dietrich," Indy shouted. "It's gone. I destroyed it." Dietrich turned to face Indy, his eyes burning with rage. "You fool," he snarled. "You have unleashed a power that you cannot possibly control." He lunged at Indy, but Indy was ready for him. He dodged Dietrich's attack and punched him in the face, sending him sprawling to the ground. The mercenaries opened fire, and Indy was forced to take cover behind the sarcophagus. He knew that he couldn't fight them all. He needed to find a way to escape the tomb before it collapsed completely. He noticed a hidden passage behind the sarcophagus, a narrow tunnel that led into the darkness. He knew that it was his only chance. He turned to flee, but as he did, he saw that one of the mercenaries was about to trigger a deadly trap. A pressure plate that would release a torrent of poisoned darts. Without hesitation, Zara jumped in front of Indy, shielding him from the darts. The darts pierced her body, and she crumpled to the ground, her eyes wide with pain. "Zara!" Indy shouted, rushing to her side. "Go, Indy, go!" she whispered, her voice weak. "Save yourself. Save the world." Indy hesitated for a moment, tears streaming down his face. He didn't want to leave her, but he knew that she was right. He had to escape the tomb and stop Dietrich from unleashing Akhenaten's power upon the world. He kissed Zara on the forehead and then turned and fled into the hidden passage, leaving her to die in the collapsing tomb. As he ran, he heard the sounds of the tomb collapsing around him, the screams of the mercenaries, and the chilling laughter of Akhenaten's curse. That he escaped the tomb just as it crumbled into a pile of rubble, the sands of the desert swallowing it whole. He stood alone in the desert, mourning Zara's loss, but knowing that he had a duty to fulfill. He escaped through the hidden passage. Indy stumbled out of the hidden passage, coughing and sputtering, his clothes covered in dust and debris. The desert stretched out before him, an endless expanse of sand and sky. He was alone, grieving for Zara, but knowing that he had a mission to complete, that he had to stop Dietrich from unleashing Akhenaten's power upon the world, that he knew that Dietrich had survived the collapse of the tomb. He had seen him escape, his eyes burning with fanaticism. That he knew that Dietrich would not give up until he had obtained the secrets of Akhenaten's black magic. Indy set off across the desert, determined to track down Dietrich and put an end to his madness. He followed the tracks of Dietrich's vehicles, his heart filled with anger and resolve. After days of relentless pursuit, he finally caught up with Dietrich at a remote archaeological dig site. Dietrich and his remaining mercenaries were excavating a hidden chamber, searching for the source of Akhenaten's power. Indy burst into the chamber, his revolver drawn. "It's over, Dietrich," he shouted. "You can't control Akhenaten's power." Dietrich turned to face Indy, his face twisted with hatred. "You're too late, Jones," he sneered. "I have found the key to Akhenaten's immortality." He revealed a golden amulet, adorned with strange symbols. "This amulet contains the essence of Akhenaten's soul," he explained. "With it, I can become immortal, a god among men." Indy knew that he had to stop Dietrich before he could use the amulet. He opened fire, shooting at Dietrich and his mercenaries. A fierce gun battle erupted in the chamber. Indy fought bravely, using his wits and his skills to outmaneuver his enemies. He managed to disarm several of the mercenaries, but Dietrich was too powerful. He used the amulet to deflect Indy's bullets, his eyes glowing with an unholy light. "You cannot stop me, Jones," Dietrich shouted. "Akhenaten's power is mine." He raised the amulet above his head, preparing to unleash its power. Indy knew that he had to act quickly, or all would be lost. He remembered what he had learned from the ancient scrolls in Akhenaten's tomb. He knew that Akhenaten was not just a religious reformer. He was a sorcerer, a madman who had sought immortality through dark magic. He realized that the key to defeating Dietrich was to understand Akhenaten's secrets, to exploit his weaknesses. He studied the amulet, recognizing the symbols as ancient spells designed to bind Akhenaten's soul to the physical world. He knew that if he could disrupt the spells, he could sever Dietrich's connection to Akhenaten's power. He took aim and fired at the amulet, shattering it into pieces. As the amulet crumbled, a wave of energy surged through the chamber, knocking Dietrich off his feet. Now Dietrich was no longer in control. As the amulet shattered, a surge of black energy erupted from its fragments, engulfing Dietrich in its dark embrace. The remaining mercenaries screamed in terror as Dietrich's body began to contort and transform. His skin turned pale and translucent, his eyes glowed with an unholy light, and his limbs grew long and grotesque. Dietrich was no more. Akhenaten's spirit, unleashed from the amulet, had possessed his body, transforming him into a monstrous vessel for the Pharaoh's vengeful spirit. "You have failed, Jones," the creature roared, its voice a chilling blend of Dietrich's and Akhenaten's. "Now you will face the full power of the forgotten Pharaoh." The creature lunged at Indy, its claws outstretched. Indy dodged the attack, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that he was facing something far more dangerous than a mere mercenary. He was facing the wrath of an ancient god. The creature possessed superhuman strength and speed. It moved with a supernatural grace, its attacks swift and deadly. Indy struggled to defend himself, dodging its claws and firing his revolver, but the bullets seemed to have little effect. He tried to reason with Dietrich, hoping to appeal to his humanity. But it was no use. Akhenaten's spirit had completely consumed him, erasing his personality and his memories. "Dietrich, can you hear me?" Indy shouted. "You don't have to do this. Fight him. Resist his control." But the creature only laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the chamber. "There is no Dietrich anymore, Jones," it hissed. "There is only Akhenaten." The creature unleashed a torrent of black magic, conjuring shadowy figures that attacked Indy from all sides. Indy fought bravely, using his whip and his wits to fend off the shadowy figures. But he was overwhelmed, and he knew that he was outmatched. He needed to find a way to sever Akhenaten's connection to Dietrich's body, to banish the Pharaoh's spirit back to the underworld. He remembered the ancient scrolls he had found in the tomb, the spells and incantations that were used to bind Akhenaten's soul to the amulet. He realized that if he could reverse those spells, he could break Akhenaten's hold on Dietrich's body. He began to chant the ancient incantations, his voice trembling but resolute. The chamber began to shake, and the air crackled with energy. The creature screamed in agony as Akhenaten's spirit struggled against Indy's magic. Its body convulsed and contorted, its eyes flashing with pain and rage. Indy continued to chant, pouring all of his willpower into the ancient spells. He could feel Akhenaten's power weakening. His grip on Dietrich's body slipping finally. With a deafening roar, Akhenaten's spirit was banished from Dietrich's body. The creature collapsed to the ground, its eyes dimming, its limbs growing limp. The fight was not over as the creature was now more dangerous than ever. Dietrich's body lay on the ground, twitching and convulsing. The chamber was silent, save for Indy's heavy breathing. That he knew that the danger was not over. That Akhenaten's spirit may have been banished, but its influence lingered, twisting and corrupting Dietrich's physical form. Slowly, Dietrich began to rise. His eyes filled with a malevolent intelligence. That Akhenaten's power had not been completely extinguished. It had merely been transferred, infusing itself into Dietrich's very being. "You may have banished my spirit, Jones?" Dietrich rasped, his voice strained and unnatural. "But you have not defeated me. I am Akhenaten now, and I will have my revenge." He lunged at Indy, his movements faster and more powerful than before. He possessed not only Akhenaten's power but also Dietrich's military training and ruthlessness. Indy knew that he was in for the fight of his life. He had to find a way to destroy Akhenaten's physical form, to prevent him from unleashing his power upon the world. He remembered what he had learned from the ancient myths and legends. Akhenaten was a sun worshipper, a believer in the power of light. He realized that the key to defeating him was to exploit his weakness to the darkness. He grabbed a torch from the wall and held it aloft, its flickering flame casting long shadows across the chamber. He used the torch to ward off Dietrich's attacks, forcing him to retreat into the shadows. He began to recite ancient hymns to the sun god Ra, his voice echoing through the chamber. The hymns were a powerful weapon against Akhenaten's darkness, weakening his hold on Dietrich's body. Dietrich screamed in agony as the hymns washed over him. His body began to convulse and contort, his eyes flashing with pain and rage. Indy knew that he had to deliver the final blow. He charged at Dietrich, wielding the torch like a weapon. He plunged the torch into Dietrich's chest, setting his body ablaze. Dietrich screamed in agony as the flames consumed him. Akhenaten's power was finally extinguished, his physical form destroyed as Dietrich's body burned. The chamber began to shake violently. The walls cracked and crumbled, and the ceiling began to collapse. Indy knew that he had to escape quickly, or he would be buried alive. He raced towards the exit, dodging falling debris and collapsing walls. He burst out of the chamber just as the entire dig site collapsed, burying Dietrich and Akhenaten's secrets beneath tons of rubble. The tomb was gone. Indy stood alone in the vast desert, the setting sun casting long shadows across the sand. The dig site was gone, swallowed by the earth, leaving no trace of the horrors that had unfolded. Beneath its surface, he was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. He had lost Zara, his friend and colleague, a woman of extraordinary intelligence and courage. He mourned her loss deeply, knowing that he would never forget her sacrifice. He had also faced Akhenaten, the forgotten Pharaoh, a man who had sought immortality through dark magic and unleashed a terrible curse upon the world. He had witnessed the power of the occult, the dangers of tampering with forces beyond human comprehension, had learned a valuable lesson. Some secrets are best left buried. He turned his back on the ruins and began to walk towards the horizon, towards the rising sun. He had to leave Egypt. To put this nightmare behind him, he made his way back to Cairo, where he boarded a plane for London. As the plane soared through the sky, he reflected on his adventure, on the choices he had made, and on the consequences of his actions. He knew that he had done the right thing, that he had prevented Akhenaten's power from falling into the wrong hands. But he also knew that he had paid a heavy price. He arrived in London, a changed man. He was older, wiser, and more cautious. He had seen the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of the world, and he knew that he had to be vigilant, to protect humanity from the forces of evil. He visited Alastair Humphrey's antique shop, thanking him for the map that had led him on this incredible journey. He didn't tell Alastair everything that had happened. Sparing him the details of the horrors he had witnessed, he simply said that he had found Akhenaten's tomb, but that it had been destroyed. He told Alistair that some secrets are best left buried, and that he should never speak of Akhenaten again. He returned to his university. Resuming his teaching duties, he continued to study ancient civilizations, but he approached his work with a new sense of caution and respect. He never forgot Zara, her courage, and her sacrifice. He honored her memory by dedicating his life to protecting the world from the forces of darkness. He knew that the fight against evil was never